Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our fourth and concluding session of GST Colloquium, Four Dimensions of 4 Years Journey. We are indeed thankful to all the participants for joining in that large number. And we have got a lot of feedbacks and comments on mails, etc. also that they really like the format where we as tax experts were speaking less and they were hearing more from the industry side as to what are their take on various issues. And a lot of people have got insight as to how different companies have a take on substantive legal as well as procedural issues relating to GST. So when we talk about GST being an indirect tax, it's a pass through, and being an indirect tax, the burden is always borne by the consumer. But when the government said that they wanted GST to be a good and simple tax, so simplicity was supposed to be the essence. But has it been a reality? In our opinion, that the GST portal has been a big failure, particularly in the light that India is a software hub of the world. We make softwares for different multinationals across the globe. And recently we came across that even the direct tax or income tax portal also, which was recently launched, faced a lot of glitches. So it's unfortunate. And even the second point, the 100% matching of credit issue, which was debated a lot in yesterday's session also, this is nowhere in the world. So even in the inaugural session, Mr. D.D. Goyal, one of the panelists, rightly mentioned that the government had been too ambitious, but the implementation has been poor, which is leading to all these issues. And we had technology issues relating to transition of credits, due to which so many cases have gone into the courts, etc. So uh, technology had been, from government's perspective, not supporting industry in general. So our today's session is ease in compliances and role of technology. Once the session is over, we'll also be announcing the results of essay writing competition, which we conducted amongst India's leading law schools on constitutional and legal issues, which we foresee under GST. So we got a lot of encouraging response. Uh, and Again, like other sessions, we are with uh, eminent and eminent panelists from diversified industries who come with a significant experience. So to introduce our panelists, we have Mr. Vinod. He's a senior general manager and indirect tax head of TCS. We have Mr. Rajesh Gosai, who is tax head of Ericsson India. So just to mention that Rajesh was panelist on our first year event also, which we organized, and he was also part of the same session, that ease in compliance and role of technology. So Rajesh can throw light that have we made any progress in last 3 years. We have Shama Jha, who is India Group Tax Head of CNH Industrial. And we have Saurabh Mittal, who is Director Tax and Customs, Schneider Electric India. We have our colleague Gaurav Narula, who will be moderating today's session. So over to you, Gaurav.
Yeah, thank you, Puneet. I'll start this session with the saying that the data is the next big oil and the technology is the new next normal. You look at all the major giants like Google, Facebook, YouTube, they are billion-dollar companies, and their prime source of revenue is the data, which is being monetized to generate the advertisements revenue. If you look at the journey of UPA government in last 5 to 8 years, the only thing they have banked upon for any kind of reform in the country is the data point, which is the Aadhaar backed by the PAN number. If this is the new reality, how can we imagine a tech system which is not dependent upon the data points. I think this has been initially acknowledged by the income tax department. They built up the whole story on the data. Today, they have reached a point where everything is baseless. The same is happening under the GST law, where the prime source is your invoice, be it on the output side or input side, and everything is the consequence of technology, which is leading to a stream interplay of compliances and the economic growth. So today, technology is going to be the big part of our discussion, and in fact, we got feedback that this is the first time a dedicated session on technology in GST is happening. So you can imagine how important it is to be well aware, well versed about the technology and its interplay in the GST. So with this, we'll move to the first segment of our presentation, which is the ERP and books of accounts. I think every fundamental thing comes down to one thing: how things are being accounting recognized in a system. If you will see the journey of GST, I think kind of they have made a lot of progress on technology part, but at the same time they have created a big issues to the players who were not prepared, especially the service sector, because they came up with some unique provisions, unique law, which demanded a lot of improvisations on the existing processes. Uh, Change is always welcome, but the only point is the time which is given how to implement this change. Now, the problem which I'll say with the GST has been either the country was not prepared for this or the government demanded too much improvisations on the existing ERP system, which kind of led to a situation where few things become out of challenge. The first and foremost has been the ERP integration. I think for last 2 years, at the time of introduction of GST, the company who wanted to be the big compliant partners on GST standpoint, they were working on a return system of GSTR 1, 2, 3. And in a 3 months time, it was a disaster when government has to roll back this system without any option, without a solution. Now that's the problem. When people invested so much time, energy, effort in developing a ERP system to take care of a GST compliance, you can't expect people to simply move to another thing as per your whims and fancy. That has been the major problem with the GST system. For service sector, yes, from day one, the sector demanded that, let us focus on compliance and revenue. What do we want to work us on the state-wise integration of GST in the books of accounts? But no, this is how the law went. Today, for a service provider, be it small or a big, the moment you want to operate out of the country, you have to take multiple number of registration. And the problem increased when the law introduced a provision to have even different registration in the same state. You talk about HSN system. India has a history of more than 30 years where classification dispute has been prominent. In our second session on supply, like this was the point raised by one of the panelists that even the taxable event of manufacture is not defined. You forget about the duty rates. I can tell you we have a Mahabharat of HSN in India. Still, we came up with a system where we said, okay, you go to a customs HSN, but in the meanwhile, we'll also demand HSN as per the schedule classifications issued by us. We came up with a policy that initially we need HSNs only for limited forecourts. It moved to 6. And in parallel, I have an import and export transactions which demanded HSN at 8 level. So a lot of unclarity on this progress. Most importantly, the fundamental concept that it is a transaction-based tax on goods and services. Yet, for multiple reasons, I have to keep tracking of credit pertaining to input service, and capital goods. So these has been the challenges, and now I request my panelist, Mr. Vinod, sir, you have been in the revenue in the past. You are now working with one of the largest technology company of India. Now I have a question like, what has been your experience in terms of GST integration from ERP, state-wise bookkeeping, ITC, and what are the best practices you have adopted to deal with so many demanding things from the GST law?
Yeah, thanks, Gaurav. See, GST, as we know that it has its own baggage. Being a federal system, there is a stake of the states, there is a stake of center, and we will require to update the overall, we have to take a look at the overall business processes and then make the changes according to the requirement of the law. So this in TCS, if I have to give my experience, we started, and most of the big players, I feel, started with GST implementation prior to maybe 2 years before when it has been announced. So we actually within TCS, we have created a CFT, cross-functional team, because it's a business transformation. Actually, within TCS, we have 4 ERP systems. We have multiple, almost 12 source systems. And there are a lot many reports which are available around the ERP. So integrating all those was really a mammoth task in itself. But incentive for doing that was also very big. If you miss a one source system, you could have lost the input credit of 100 crores. So it was the amount which were involved in that. So what we did, actually, we had a CFT, and then our systems, although TCS is present in 52 countries and as well as almost all the states in India, and we have a kind of deliveries which ranging from a manufacturing of something till the services to the foreign customers. Everybody knows TCS is a service company, but we have multiple types of businesses, including the e-commerce platform. So we touch upon all the provisions of GST, and there is a stake involved. So what we did actually, prior to GST, there was a VAT which was a state-wise. So we have made our ERP system capable of every transaction we can locate from where it is generating. So state-wise segregation either of the revenue or a purchases, which was not an issue at all in TCS, and we could raise invoice. And this is proudly I'm saying that in TCS we could raise invoice on the day one, on a 1st July 2017 we could do that. That is because there was a lot of effort which has been done. I know that. See, there were 2 approaches before the government, either to go big bang with all changes or to gradually do the changes. They have chosen the earlier one. Definitely, they have to backtrack certain decisions, and it is see, mainly, secondly, we have to look at the India. We are so diverse kind of a country, and having a population of vendors where some people are well advanced in technology, and there are certain people, those who are not knowing, they are not having even a computer. But I feel that it's a success of GST, and one need to recognize that a plethora of various laws and tax authorities and jurisdictions, those are gone. That's the history now. And we have a single law, although we call it a single and there are multiple states involved, but still it's a big achievement as a one market towards it. There is a lot of scope to improve, but I think this is doable maybe. And now every taxpayer is filing online return, which nobody could have thought earlier to GST. And even the developing countries, those were also not able to think of this kind of a tax reform. And now I feel that the technology is, I think, a major part of a tax compliance. There is a law, definitely law has its own importance, because by way of which the government can collect revenue. But along with that, now technology become a very important thing to survive and do business in. But I feel that we could succeed. There were issues. Definitely, we also faced the challenges initially to do compliances. But moreover, those who are prepared and those who have done their homework well, I think they could make the compliance more than, I feel, the 90-95%, whatever is required by law.
Very well said, sir. I think that's the realistic answer we have got from your side. I'll now move to my other panelist, Saurabh. So, Saurabh, you are leading one of the diversified electrical business in the country, and your company is something which has witnessed all sort of tax structure, be it SEZs, EUUs, manufacturing, distribution. So, how has been your experience in terms of ERP and bookkeeping in the GST system?
Before I specifically make any comments from our industry perspective, I would say one thing: technology does not always come as a user-friendly technology, and the
Mm.
reason I'm saying it because I'm facing this challenge with the technology in my room where I'm sitting, where somehow these sensor lights are not sensing my presence, and that's the reason it keeps on switching off again and again. So, pardon me in case if the light again go dark. Now, coming to this point, I think, as you rightly said, Schneider is a very complex organization with almost all the kind of transactions that one can perceive are very well there in Schneider. Implementing GST was a mammoth task for us because of the kind of different structures where we were kind of the law was new for us. Company was already kind of working on the traditional business models and traditional ERP models for long. So obviously the entire implementation of GST was a mammoth task. It took us, as Mr. Vinod rightly said, we started preparing almost 2 years back when we got the first fine print of how GST looks like. And then obviously it was I would say a roller coaster experience of this entire GST implementation. Now, when we were doing it, it came with its own set of challenges because not everything can be integrated with ERP. We are working on various global platforms, which has its own set of challenges, and we can't just customize them basis our requirement. Had it been a case where we had maybe simple ERP platforms or Indianized platforms, things could have been easy. But the moment we work on a global platform, things become a little difficult because you have to really see the larger picture of whether particular integration can only hit India or whether it has a larger global impact. So I think there we had various challenges, and uh, while we achieved some kind of digitization technology, but complete integration is not, was not possible, and we have not done that. Uh, besides the besides the challenges from the ERP perspective, there were various other concerns as well. Like if I say data privacy, that is one of the major concerns because the moment you give the access of your ERP, there could be challenges in really controlling the data flow. While integration could ensure a seamless data flow with a minimal mistake, but data privacy, data sensitivity becomes an issue. So here we are using internal, middleware, which acts as a link between our ERP and the government platforms, wherein the data is flown, the data is routed, and accordingly, all the compliances, whether it's your monthly return filings or e-way bill generation or even e-invoicing that's being done, is done that way because not only from a data security perspective, it also gives us various other benefits in terms of data retrieval, data retention, getting a dashboard for with various reports which you can use for your analytical purposes. So integration, I would say, is could be a good I'm sorry, yeah, integration could come with its own benefits, but I think there are various larger perspectives that need to be keep in mind before one can really opt for a complete seamless data flow between ERP and the government portals.
Right, sir. And sir, your quick comment on one point, like what was your reaction when you got to know that GST is not coming up with the return system of 1, 2, and 3, which was the backbone for last 1.5 year, and more than 25% of the GST Act and rules are dependent on this return filing system.
I think, in fact, this is one of the larger observation that I have is that uh, where there was always a unclarity till the last day of
Mm,
any particular date of implementation in terms of what the final law is going to look like, whether it's from a GST side, even from an income tax side, because I'm kind of
mm,
looking at both the things. We have generally seen government coming out with clarifications at the last minute, or bringing in some surprise at the last minute.
right,
so
right.
so uh, obviously, when we were working on this implementation, obviously, as you rightly said, these were all the backbones where we were working. We were kind of looking at how we need to work on these return filings. But when it got introduced, and obviously the government only came out with one and freebie and kind of
Hmm.
did away with other returns. At that point of time, it would look feasible because somewhere it was not only new for us, but even for the government, because it required a massive infrastructure to be put in place. And obviously, when the government decided to push away the timelines for some of the returns, it was, I think, welcomed by all, because that would have given some time to everyone to really absorb the new law and come out with the initial set of challenges, and then progressively working on the new written formats and the additional data that is required to be filed. But I believe they still a kind of I'm extremely sorry. I think there's still a work needs to be done, because as I said, there has to be a confirmation, there has to be more clarity on what exactly industry needs to do in the
Right.
longer run.
Right, sir. Right.
So Gaurav, one question here I have, and I think especially for Rajesh and Vinod. So one of the point we were discussing in the first session was this ERP integration and all those things. So one of the panelists mentioned that in his organization, pre-GST, some 80 or 90 people used to handle indirect tax function, and once GST came, it became 30, and it was more a merchandise or a goods company. But now, if you come to a service company and a large company like TCS or Ericsson, so earlier, in my view, at least service tax compliances, if we leave aside VAT, those were simple in the sense half yearly return. You can have a single registration across India. So now multiple registrations. Uh, and so have actually the compliances multiplied for all of you, which even from an ERP perspective, earlier less data points or reports, etc., were needed. Now more is needed. And overall, even the number of people or efforts which are being put by your organization in doing GST compliances, has that actually multiplied? So Rajesh, maybe you can share your
Sure.
thoughts first, and then
Sure.
Vinod or any other panelist can also add.
Sure. From my perspective, I can only add a few things here. One, of course, GST introduction has brought a lot of clarity and more impetus on the systems in any particular organization, because we can argue all in this particular aspect on the other side as well, that GST has brought a lot of pains for us. But Puneet and others, I'll put it this way. Uh, there are certain economies across the world which are highly matured economies, and then one has to look at the behavioral aspect of the people in any country.
Right.
In countries like India, a lot of us are honest taxpayers, no doubt about it. But then maybe I'm not saying the others are not that honest, but yes, there lies some gap somewhere. And to bridge that gap, if the government is trying to do something, of course, whatever you earn, whatever you sell, you pay a tax on that legitimately under the tax law, under the constitution. It's, I think, a fair ask from the government. So if the government tries to put across certain things, that yes, you have to comply with this regulation, matching concept, everything, I see it as a welcome step. Of course, it can be argued that yes, there has to be something more attached to it, just so that honest taxpayers are not punished beyond a point. Now, coming to your question, whether the compliance has gone down or up, my answer would be, I should say it has gone up. Not maybe the return part in case we count everything, but of course, service tax for purely service company to us 2 returns only per year. But now I think if you are filing monthly, then I think 3 returns, 2 returns a month, then other returns, I think 25 at least. So for sure, the compliance requirement has significantly gone up, because as Saurabh mentioned, there are a lot of big companies which cannot customize their ERP the way GST is being structured or has been structured. So if certain functionalities are not available to you, so for example, when I was implementing GST in this company in 2017, we made very specific request to our IT service provider and our IT experts in the organization that we need this functionality, because this is what the law provides, law asks us to do, but it was declined. because they were not sure of the fact that India business may be say 5% of the global business. And if I develop a functionality and that functionality tomorrow creates a problem for the group, then the business or the invoicing can come to an hold. This is
Right.
something which they cannot accept. What do I do? Should I not comply with the law? No, this is not the option with us. We have to comply with the law. And when we have to comply with the law, I have to put my people, you have to work hard. Because system may not be supporting you 100%. It's not that its support is not around from the system, but not 100% at times.
Right.
So to that extent, the work has, for us at least, and in my team, I still see a need to, if not multiply, but add maybe few more headcounts the way we are today. So we have never gone down from the earlier days.
Right.
Shyam,
Right.
Shyam or Vinod, you have any thoughts?
See, I can briefly tell Puneet that in TCS, though we are a service company, but we were having 20 VAT registration in
Right.
20 different states.
Right.
So there are people, those who were handling the VAT portion also.
Okay.
Fortunately for us, there was no increase in the headcount. And I feel the more or less the compliance, whatever the returns we were filing, those also remain, though we got 48 registration under GST, which were more than the earlier one. But still, I feel that it was manageable because everything was online. So the headcount is not increased because of that.
Okay. Valid point.
Yeah, Puneet. So,
Sir, your voice, we are missing
Shyam,
your voice.
voice is not clearly coming.
Am I audible now?
Not clearly. You're on mute, Shyam.
Am I audible now?
Yeah, it's clear now. Yeah.
Yeah. So in terms of agriculture segment, Puneet and Gaurav, so this is a massive change. So as you know, the agriculture industry was as a tax consuming unit earlier, before the implementation of GST in July 2017. So whatever tax that was get built on the procurement, that was a cost to the company, and it was very easy life for the agriculture industry. And suddenly that comfort has gone away in 2017 when the agriculture industry put into a focus to claim GST credit. So that is a huge compliance burden that has got increased on the part of agriculture segment, but that's a welcome step. So in terms of compliance, definitely there's no doubt on that the compliance burden has gone up. So system development, system driven approach needs to be adopted by the industry now. So it's a half cooked food that has got served on your platter, and now we have used to it.
Right.
So we have to, and the only silver lining on that part that government is considering, every month, every quarter, there is some development that is happening. So that's the only silver lining part. But on the compliance part, there is a need of the techno-commercial guy who can manage your tax functions. So the tax expertise, the tax skill is one part, but the techno-commercial expertise that will brought in the efficiency on the tax function.
Right.
So I'm a firm believer that if you can use your technology to the best advantage of industry and the compliance, that's a deadly combination that you need to have in place.
Right.
One more point.
Yeah, Rajesh. Yeah.
One more point I would like to add here. If we go to the erstwhile era and talk about the VAT, of course, every manufacturer or the trader was in any case registered with VAT authorities. But I think we should bear that one particular thing in mind, that VAT filing was just one of the steps. You file monthly or quarterly return basis the VAT law of the particular state, and then forget about it for next 12 months, because when you are coming under the assessment, you will be asked questions. What is happening today? If you are registered in say 10, 15, 20 provinces across the country, then you can hope that one email communication you will receive from most of the states, because there would always be difference between your filings and whatever you are claimed and what the vendor has done. So if we simply compare the VAT traders only and the GST, that they were not service providers, even for them also the work would significantly go up, because that era we never saw that VAT authorities reaching out to you every month and asking for some information. They were sitting quiet. One day will come, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days in a particular year. They'll do the assessment. They'll close it, whether accept it or reject it, your filings. But now I think you have to be on your toes always. So this is the
No.
paradigm shift which has happened.
No, I think very, very valid point. So if I summarize, I think everyone's discussion, more or less, the compliance burden has either remained same or has significantly increased only. But
Gone up, yeah.
but Rajesh and Sham, I think you also made a valid point that if we see overall scheme of things or the cost efficiencies, or like Vinod mentioned, the point of consistency, etc. I think those are big takeaways. And for sure, technology will be the big enabler for every taxpayer or a company to either successfully do compliances or not. Yeah.
Right, Puneet. I think
Right.
these are the problems which we are facing as a developing country. But some way we have to start, and I believe that this is the right beginning. So with this, we'll move to the other segment of our presentation. Let's talk about the GST return. I'd say that India has a very unique GST return system. There is no option to make advance payment of taxes. Plus, if you have to eventually reach to the tax payout to the government, there are a lot of steps which has to be followed. Sometimes it looks like the game of Ludo where you have to pass each and every steps with perfection. Your day will start with day one, looking at the data of GSTR 2A, you will file GSTR 1. If you are a quarterly service supply provider, then you have to file an invoice report. You will wait for 2A 2B for reconciliation, and then eventually you will reach to a date of GSTR 3B. So all in all, the ultimate payment of tax has a lot of ladder-wise approach. So with this, let us see some problems which has been created in this process from the government side. There has been a lot of development at the back end in terms of ERP infrastructure. Then we don't have a stable system in the country where I can simply integrate my system with the government expectations and return so that this compliance can be done. We have initially witnessed that government shortlisted a lot of ASPs who eventually become GSPs, but still there is no 100% perfect solution for this. The unique problem in India we have is that there is no rectification process. The moment you have uploaded the data, be it right or wrong, it is your responsibility and you are accountable for this data. And yes, which Rajesh rightly mentioned, we have never seen this era where every state is demanding every reconciliation, be it email you with your GSTR1, be it GSTR1 with GSTR3. Increasingly, the consequences of these non-reconciliations are big time notices. You are investing too much time on responding to those notices. You have to deal with a manual process system with the authorities. Even if you will file submissions, then there are hardcode timelines. You may get unanswered notices from the department, and most importantly, there is no course correction. You have to deal with this. So with this, I will request Mr. Sham. Sir, I know that you deal with a lot of HSN volumes. You have a part business, you have a manufacturing business. You are also an exporter, you file refunds. So how has been your experience in dealing with such a massive data, crystallizing it in the GST returns format? And what problems you really face in dealing with this day in, day out compliances under the GST?
As you have rightly mentioned, Gaurav, so in terms of GST return filing, so there's a long list of GST returns that you need to file. And it starts with GSTR1 and it goes to the GSTR9. So if you go step by step, so GSTR1 is quite comfortable in terms of invoicing when the invoicing got implemented. So now your GSTR data is originally or basically you can say that it's automatically populated.
Right.
But what about B2C transaction? Still on the B2C transaction, you have to manually update that along with the HSN code. So when the invoicing system does capture the HSN code, do the industry need to repunch the HSN data again? That is not, it is a tough part on the part of industry.
Right.
So if the invoicing system does contain all the information regarding the HSN, why the industry need to repunch that information again? So that can be discussed, debated to the government forum. This data is already available in the invoicing system.
Correct.
If you come back to the GSTR 2A 2B data, on the sales side, I would say that system is quite comfortable in terms of compliance, but when you come back to the purchase side, there's still not lot of development has to happen.
Correct.
We are facing a lot of challenge on the GST part, on the purchase part. So there are two set of data, 2A and 2B. So while the 2A is quite dynamic, the 2B is quite static. So if the guy who has filed his return in the month of July for next year, so that will get recorded in the 2A in the same month, but the real time updation will happen in 2B. So the rule 36(4) absolutely contradicts with that approach. So what is the purpose of having 2B?
Correct.
So either government has to implement the GSTR 2, which is the basic intent of the government. So far, I think the problem lies with the GSTR 2. They have to implement GSTR 2 as soon as possible.
Right. Very
Similarly,
well.
If you come back to the e-invoicing part, so now the 6-digit registration code is mandatory. But what about the companies who have turnover less than 5 crores? They are still using the 4-digit registration code. But companies like us who has a turnover of more than 5 crore, although invoicing is happening, but at the time of return filing, you are get caught a hold on that, and you have to justify why you have used the 4-digit registration code. So either you divide the system at the time of invoicing itself. Don't allow anybody to do the invoicing with 4-digit registration code. So you are relying at one stage and you're restricting it at the next stage. That's a big problem that is being faced by the industry currently.
Right.
Similarly, on the e-invoicing part, the continuity of the e-invoicing system. So do we really need to have a e-wail system when the e-invoicing system is already in place? But there are some transaction Gaurav. So like the delivery challan movement that is happening currently, that companies who are having turnover of less than 50 crores, there is still movement needs to be tracked, and that is being captured, and that's the purpose. But at least for the invoicing transaction, which has already been covered under the invoicing, there we can take a liberal view on the e-wail parts. So there are few issues which are recurring in nature, and that needs to have a serious note on that needs to be placed to the government.
Right, sir. We'll definitely come back to you on the e-bill part as well. I'll now go to the Rajesh. Rajesh, you handle the global compliances as well. Sir, what has been your experience in the other countries in terms of eventual payout of tax and compliance of return?
Yeah. So as far as my work areas goes, I handle VAT compliance for Middle East and African countries besides India. So if we talk about these countries particularly, then, and of course we all know that there are a lot of developed countries, and those are having VAT for last many decades. So they have saturated, or in terms of of course, whenever they need to carry out an amendment in the law, they do that. But procedurally, I think they are well settled now. But when we talk about India and other countries, let me tell you, we stand at much better footing, because when I keep on speaking to my colleagues who practically do it on the ground, I find, we are so matured in the system now. One thing I think we need to bear in mind, that when we are comparing ourselves, we need to compare the demography, we need to compare the population, we need to compare the GDP size. And we are not comparable with each and every country. There are a couple of countries which are much larger than us, and there are many countries which are lower than us in terms of their volume of the activities. So if I have to talk about few countries in Africa, they have common similarities like what we have in GST. So for example, matching concept. In some of the countries, you will find the government has given the taxpayers a machine wherein they need to punch their data, and machine is in any case connected with the government through a portal. And in some countries, you have to go to the website, find a particular number, and with that number, you have to do the matching of the invoice. So if you see all those things practically, you will realize, of course, when we talk about technology, I think India is far better than many such countries which has introduced GST. And of course, I know it's been just 4 years time, and 4 years, no system can, ripe to the final extent. We have to wait and watch. Let us give 5 more years to this system. And once the taxpayers, say for example, we'll discuss more about it in this seminar, a bit of matching concept. I'll offer my more comments on around that. Why we believe, of course, it's a pain for the businesses, But see the other side also. Where is the what is the way out left to the government? Because government should collect legitimate taxes, and the taxpayer should pay the taxes to the government. So if something has been defined in between, that this is the media through which you have to ensure your compliance, I do think we should not be having any reservation around it, and of course most of us would not have. But whatever reservations are around, I think we should find the finance practical solutions to those problems. So as I mentioned, India stands far, far better than, so for example, many countries in the Middle East, they are just even thinking about e-invoicing. And we have already implemented that. So think of a country with so much of the economic activities. So in terms of the economic activities, we are many, many times ahead than what they are. And we have made it clear in first 3 years that e-invoicing, e-way bill. So I think we are moving in the right direction. And of course, I acknowledge the fact that yes, there are pain points, but it's for the government and the public participation that those pain points should be brought to the right channels in a right way. And perhaps 5 years from now, we will be witnessing, at least to me seems, we should not be discussing these points after 5 years from now.
Right, right.
Maybe new things, the litigation can come on many points. And COVID maybe has been a boon to us. That last around 1.5 years, we have not seen much litigation coming on the GST side. And practically by now, the courts would have already got flooded with the litigation. So that is something a reprieve for the time being. And but I'm very bullish as far as the systems are concerned when I compare myself in this country as a citizen of this country with the taxpayers in the other countries.
Right, right.
And Gaurav, I would like to add one thing to what Rajesh has mentioned, and I think he has rightly mentioned that while doing a comparison, we really need to look at the business environment of India vis-a-vis other countries. Now, India is very complex. India is very unique. Besides GST, we have so many other regulations also. In fact, recently, I was just kind of working on a particular advisory where we were trying to do a work on a correlation between SEZ and GST.
Right.
Both in pre-GST era and post-GST era, and we were trying to work out how SEZ can override or whether SEZ rules can override GST. So I think things are quite complicated and it will take its own time. One thing I would say, which I would even acknowledge and maybe congratulate government about it, that by introducing this GST first and then followed it by invoicing, they have already kind of brought India at a in terms of the ladder. They have already made India to a higher step, because I still know few large countries who are still working on the pre-printed stationery, despite the fact that they might have some matured processes, but they are still far behind from getting into such kind of digitization which we are experiencing today. So I think we also need to be acknowledging the fact that every transformation comes with some hiccups, and this is more like a transformation stage for all of us, where we have to maybe work a little more. We will see the challenges, but as Mr. Rajesh rightly said, I think it's over a period of time we can really see reaching a era where things are more simplified and we can look at a broader aspects rather than working on the routine challenges.
Right,
So,
right.
so very valid points, both Rajesh and Saurabh. I think in terms of GST, the thinking process or whatever, if we'll just discuss about the compliances, be it invoice, etc., those are very, very forward-looking. But to some extent, I agree with Shyam also that even though he has put his all laundry list from GSTR 1 to 9, and I think it's alphanumeric 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B, etc. So the list is actually very long. But I think the purpose of this whole webinar or series also has been that, okay, whatever we have achieved in last 4 years, that's very good, but what further can be done? So I think from a return perspective, because 1, 2, 3 has never been implemented, that itself poses a challenge. 3B, which was supposed to be a temporary return, has sort of become permanent return. Even in the GST Council last meeting, they mentioned that they will make statutory provision that 3B is the default or a valid return. In between, in October 2009, the government said that we are revamping the return system again. we are bringing ANX1, ANX2, RET1, some sort of that system was planned. Even that has not been implemented. Then in between, they have brought 2A versus 2B. Cases have started, sorry, the notices have been started issuing on some AI or bots, etc. They say, oh, between year 2A and 3B, this much difference, automatic notice comes. Cases have started going to the courts also. The reconciliations have been multiple, starting from 1 versus 3B, 2A versus 3B, 2A versus 2B. Now the recent trend has been, which many of our clients have gone, is 1-3B versus e-way bill. And they're asking reconciliations on both the sides, both inward side and outward side. So to that extent, I feel that the ambitions of the government have been very right, but those have not taken pace with the implementation. So, okay. I think, as Vinod also mentioned, that we have chosen, oh, we'll go big bang. But in my view, then whatever challenges are coming on the way, we should not remain silent on that and keep on working on them. So one of the point being an exporter, Sham or other companies are facing that even there is no proper integration between GST portal and IceGate portal also for refunds on export goods, where be it Atmanirbhar Bharat or other schemes of the government, they want to encourage exports. So I also feel that yes, conceptually things are very, very good, very forward looking, but implementation gaps are also equally large.
Yes, and very well said, Puneet. And I think if we look at the flavor of this discussion, it seems that India has been way ahead in terms of thought process, the vision they have for the technological improvement in the company. So I must say kudos to the country. But at the same time, let us acknowledge that this is just a seed. We have to transform it and wait for a while. I think just one last input from my side on this is that the overall problem with the return, or even we'll discuss in this in 2A 2B, is that the government should also consider bringing up with a backup system. Like today, if technology fails, nobody has an alternate system. So there has to be some parallel mechanism which ensures that, okay, if there are genuine issues in the technology, if a taxpayer is being witnessing those changes, then at least let the business continue. Because I think Rajesh made a very valid point that nobody wants to be a non-compliant. So everybody is happy to pay taxes and run the business. But the problem is, if you will stop, or if you will start troubling the businessman to do the business by asking different data points. So with this comment, we'll move to our next segment, which is GSTR 2A and 2B. I think at least in my personal experience, this is one big area where everybody is now consciously focused, because the way government has made amendments in the law, they are now very stringent and all in all very upfront in saying that the credit will only be admissible to the extent you have in the government kitty, which is in 2A and 2B. So 2A 2B, yes, I think this is one big technological change where there is an expectation to match everything, but there are upcoming problems as well. Like Puneet mentioned, there are too many reconciliations issues. So we have 2A 2B. There are itself a reconciliations issue between 2A and 2B. Forget the data reconciliation with books of accounts. Then government has come up with a cap to claim input tax credit, Rule 36(4). People are debating on the constitutional validity of 36(4). In parallel, they are also discussing the legal sanctity of 2A and 2B, because till this 2021 amendment, there was no legal requirement to have 2A 2B. Most importantly, even if the data is there in 2A, it is not a conclusive proof that taxes have eventually been paid to the government. And lastly, yes, the sport of notices. I think this is one area where artificial intelligence is completely going wrong. We are going beyond the power to levy tax on the chargeable event. Here we are simply getting notices because there are certain mismatches, and nobody is simply applying the mind. They are just shooting it out, asking for the information where everything there in the system itself. So with this comment, I will request Saurabh to have its input. Sir, we discussed that there has been a big time and money investment when you migrated to GST to cope up with GSTR 1, 2, and 3. System kind of stabilized with the 2A, where we had technological partners to support this reconciliation. Then suddenly, in between, there is an introduction of GSTR 2B. So what was your first reaction when you encountered another change that, okay, now apart from 2A, there is also a 2B which needs to be reconciled?
So honestly, if I say Gaurav, like from an organizational perspective, we are still very much comfortable working with 2A, and that is something which we had decided to say
Right.
that okay, let's go ahead with 2A, because we had, as said, we had invested so much, we had created those processes, robust processes to ensure. I'm not saying we have achieved 100%, but yes, we are at a very, very comfortable situation as on today. Where we can say that we have almost kind of reconciled everything with a very, very small percentage left, which is also something, as we reach to the end of the year, we generally do that. So obviously, when we looked at 2B, it found, which is a static return, we found it that it's coming with some more, data points. It's giving you bifurcation between eligible credit, ineligible credit, and all. But at the same time, if we already have a robust system in place, like the way we have invested, then right now, at least, I don't see a field to really go to 2B. This is my take on it. And I think we are very well comfortably working with 2A right now.
Right, right. Sir, just one comment. How much is the manpower investment in terms of a percentage between technology and manpower to do this work in your system?
So manpower intervention is very well required, because we have not yet reached a stage where we can say that everything is 100% automated and digitized. There are so many parameters for which a reconciliation is required. Even today, if we do it under with 2A, because not everything is under your control. Even maybe AI could fail on certain parameters. So yes, manual intervention is very well required. And what I believe is that as we progress more towards the entire harmonization of e-invoicing with e-way bill, and with GSTIN, where the data will start getting populated automatically in the returns on both sides, on both the party sides, I think this manual intervention will definitely reduce.
Mhm.
Again, I would say this is still a very, I would say, advanced stage to say that whether the manpower efforts or manpower intervention should go up or go down, because we all are learning. As the
Right.
government is coming up new things, and as we just discussed that even there is more requirement for more and more reconciliations to put in place, where the tax authorities are coming with new notices, it means that the human efforts are definitely going to remain for some time, and
Right.
it may increase as well,
Right.
because
Right.
uh, especially for the past years when the system was new, there was not much of processor and orientation. There was no much reports. In fact, working on the back data requires someone to spend time, which means the corporates have to invest in their manpower, so that they can work on the past data and at least complete those reconciliations, whichever that is coming new today as by way of notices.
Right, right. I'll quickly move to Mr. Vinod. Sir, I think this is a well acknowledged fact that technology is the only solution to manage such massive data in terms of input side reconciliation, especially when it's a hard cash for the businesses. Sir, what are the best practices you have implemented? Are you also supporting with the softwares for the taxpayers to deal with this? And sir, what's your experience in terms of technological preparedness of various service provider on this reconciliation part, sir?
So
Yeah.
Vinod, I want to ask some questions, related questions only, that because you work in India's largest technology company, so is it possible to develop some software, some tool, etc., which can do 100% reconciliation with books, 2A, 2B, etc., and like Saurabh rightly mentioned that uh, even today, whichever ERP or softwares companies are using, there is no perfect reconciliation. And we have dynamics from government also sometimes 2A, sometimes 2B. So technology wise, and I'm asking from both perspective, like the Gaurav asked that best practices you have implemented, or like you also develop or implement ERPs, etc. for your clients. So is it possible to have a tool which can take care of this 100% without any manual intervention?
Yes, Puneet. See, in the initial stage of GST, we faced this challenge of reconciliation and use a lot of manual efforts doing that. And there were number of teams involved, like your procurement guy till the customer's procurement guy and his tax guy, and there is a chain of people, those who are in that email trail, and then getting a one invoice reconciled with the purchase register takes a kind of maybe few hours of man hours for doing that. So that was a kind of challenge, and having a company of this magnitude, where we have presence in 52 countries and we have all kind of vendors on our and large campuses we have around all over India. So what we decided immediately to get some kind of a technological solution. So we did the root cause analysis, why it is happening, how we can stop it. And then we decided, since it's we get a credit period from the majority of our vendor, 100%, I can give plain answer, 100% it is not possible at all. Because you have different kind of, take an example of airlines. It's altogether different ballgame. To match the airline credit, you require a separate system for that. So we created a system within TCS where before booking the invoice, we could get the GST portal data into our ERP. We have created a database and we can match. So before paying to the vendor, we know that whether he has reported that or not. So that has saved a lot of effort and it's completely working fine. And this is one of the maybe an innovation driven by tax team. It is something an in-house developed kind of a system we did. So it's possible. Technologically, you can reduce the pains.
So if I understand correctly, whatever in-house tool, etc., you have developed, so you are able to do all these reconciliations, matching, including tracking of vendor compliances, etc., through technology without any manual intervention.
Yes,
that's a
yes.
great achievement. But I think the major problem,
there will be manual intervention, Puneet, but that will be a minuscule. So it
Okay.
may be 5%, 10% you will require to
Okay.
do that. But otherwise, most of the data, our 90% data is reconciled by system.
Mhm. Okay, so I think the major issue which might be coming is that say different companies may have their own ERP, and especially multinational, they may have their own in-house ERPs also. So I think the challenge may be coming more from that perspective, how to make changes in that. So that's why I guess they may not be able to develop say 100% automatic system for that. I think that's what I guess.
And maybe Puneet, because data security could also be a reason,
Right.
because 100% reconciliation would demand 100% integration with the government applications. So yes, I can imagine the companies like TCS, HCL to do it. But what about a routine company who has nothing to do with technology? So for them, yes, I think it's a mixed bag approach um, on this basis.
No, but I can add here, the solution what we develop can be used with multiple ERPs.
Okay.
So it's a standalone you can use, and it's just a deviation from the normal process of AP, where you have in between you introduce this, and then the payment flow continue again. So it's something which is extendable with a little bit of effort and customization.
Okay, great. Sir.
Yeah, I agree with Vinod. So if you can implement a system who can track the transaction right from the GRN stage, So then you are in complete control with the transaction. So you have to establish a system where you can track your transaction right from the GRN to the AP team who was processing the invoice, then the payment is happening. So that all these steps needs to be really aligned to have a good system in place to track all those transactions. Otherwise, the compliance will be very difficult.
Right, right, sir. Sir, one last question to you on this too, Mr. Sham. Like you have such a voluminous data in your business. So what are your best practices when you do a reconciliation and you identify a list of vendors who are not filing the return, whereas you as a company are making regular payments and GSTs to them? How do you deal with such kind of suppliers in your business, sir?
So Gaurav, as you rightly mentioned, in terms of the GSTR credit that we are availing, so suddenly we are availing all as of today almost 4,000 crores of credit, GST credit every year. So we have a different verticals of business, and the 4,000 crore of GST credit is like a small company you're running. So in terms of compliance, you need to support of the system that needs to be placed. So we have a good place, a good system in place. So the GST and 2A data is getting downloaded almost at a quite frequent interval, and then we get in touch with the vendors. Please file your return if they have not uploaded their returns or invoices. We do have a system in place where we do frequently get touch with them to comply with that. So that's the irony in the system, Gaurav.
Right,
So
right.
if you are having invoice, you
Mm,
have a proof that you have paid the taxes, but
mm,
somebody has not complied with that, you will get
mm.
penalized.
Right, right.
So that is a different ruling that court is coming with.
Mm.
But as of today, after 4 years of implementation of GST, we have reached to the level of 96, 97% accuracy. But still 3% of 4,000 crore, it's a good amount of money that is in stake.
Correct, correct, correct. And
So,
that's
so Gaurav, I think we can ask. I think we can have this as the last topic because we are running out of time. We can ask Saurabh and then Rajesh also as to uh, how successfully they are able to do credit matching and what's their take on this issue.
and I'll just supplement this question. Maybe one liner experience on your e-invoicing process as well.
Okay. So on the reconciliation part, Gaurav, in any case, I had mentioned that I think we had kind of progressed a lot in terms of our reconciliation, and we are in a very good situation where I can say that we are almost reconciled. We managed to have a complete reconciliation. Even if I talk from 36-4 perspective, I think the entire benefit of 5% that's been given by the government, since we kind of very efficiently track, monitor the input tax credit. I think that's where we have decided to just go ahead with 100% rather than going ahead with 105%. So I think on the reconciliation part, we have evolved a lot with obviously a lot of manual efforts still required. But I believe as we progress, as the law also evolve, I think we definitely should continue to keep this pace with more technology involvement. Now coming to invoicing, again, I would say first we saw the GST implementation, which was a massive transformation from a business perspective, and then it was followed by e-invoicing, which was again, I would say, a transformation of equal magnitude, because we as corporates were so much used to of traditional way of working, especially on the entire transactions. This entire invoicing was a significant change, which came with its own set of experiences, which came with its own set of anxiety, especially at the time of implementation. I would say there were many hiccups, challenges. At times, there were times when you were not clear what to do. You were not times At times you were not clear how the other business leaders are going to look at it, how the users are going to really look at it, whether they will be completely trained to use the new process. But it was all in all, I would say it was a learning journey for all of us. Major concern at the back of the mind at any given day when we were working on e-invoicing implementation, that whether it would continue, it would really enforce a business continuity, or whether it would hamper the business continuity, because the moment you have to shift to a new platform, and if there's some challenge on the business continuity, if there's some business disruption, then that could create a larger issue for the support functions who are actually responsible for implementing this change. So I think all that was something which was dealt with, as I understand earlier. I think Mr. Vinod also mentioned about the CFT. So in fact, this was something which made happen only once you had a CFT in place and all the people work together day and night to make this happen. And then came the D-Day when this actually got implemented. And after that, I would say we did face some challenges initially, but at the end, I can only say all is well that ends well. Right now, I think the progresses are working well, at least on the invoicing side. Whatever initial glitches that we had, whatever initial issues that we encountered, kind of settled, more or less settled. There could be some teething issues still, but I think the overall system is working well right now.
Right, sir. Mr. Sharma, sir, your comments, please. Sir, you are on mute.
Yep. Yeah. So now hope it's perfectly fine now.
Yes, sir.
So as rightly mentioned by Vinod, so the invoicing system is currently running fine. There is no issue, big issue that we are facing right now. But the QR code, the dynamic QR code that is being done by them, that's a good step. But there are some companies who are not using basically the turnover criteria. If somebody is not using the invoicing system and they are going to the quarterly mode, so that's the working capital blockage that is happening at our end. So that issue can be not at a big scale, but certainly the turnover criteria can be reduced a bit so that matching process can happen parallelly.
Right.
So Gaurav, we can now ask Rajesh's experience on this matching and e-invoicing, and especially the manual intervention, or how simple or tough these matching of credits have been. Yeah, Rajesh, over to you. Yeah.
Sorry to Puneet, before Rajesh take it over, I need to leave. I have a very urgent global call being organized at the last minute. So, I mean, my apologies for leaving.
No, not at all, Saurabh. We are really glad that you're able to take time for that. And thank you for joining this as a panelist, and look forward to have you in future sessions also. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. Thank you, Saurabh.
Thank you, Saurabh.
Right. Yeah. Over to you, Rajesh.
Yeah. So as far as the tax credit goes, and of course, we have traveled a big way from day one till now. I do recall the earlier VAT days, where of course most of the VAT laws were not that way. That in order to get the credit, you need to match with the books or the filings of your seller. But there were certain internal guidelines of the department. For example, in Rajasthan. So I checked the law. I never found any particular provision appearing in the law. But then where I got to know about it, that there is an internal circular of the department. But the worst part there was that, if the seller, or like if I'm claiming the VAT credit, if I'm able to satisfy with the invoicing from the seller to me, to my assessing officer, then the assessing officer was, under an obligation to send it to the seller's assessing officer. So that was between department to department, but that never happened because they had their own ways of working. So that was frustrating for any taxpayer. But now I think everything is in black and white. Say that on every day, where the gap lies. So, I'll put it this way, Puneet, that we have worked very hard as far as this area is concerned. I'll not say we are 100% automated as far as this process is concerned, but yes, we believe that, and this is, our organization's philosophy, that you educate people, you educate yourself. So we hold a lot of, calls with our vendors, along with our supplier sourcing team, just to educate them, because many of the suppliers are big scale suppliers, so they don't need any education around that. But at the same time, we would have some small suppliers also. So you need to educate them. You need to step into their shoe and realize their pain points. What is making them to late file the returns, or why they are not knowing the law, what they are expected to do under the law. So we are educating them. But as far as system goes, systems, of course, I can say that yes, we are able to through systems only, and of course, we work on a different model. Because globally we are not able to align our processes the way we want as per the GST law. So we had to resort to an external agency who does this kind of work for us. And then, if we talk about, my sourcing team to get engaged into it, speak to the vendors every day, and every moment about the mismatches, then practically does not become possible, because at any point in time, we are under tremendous pressure as far as the headcount goes. So not only we in tax, but the sourcing also. So, we cannot ask them to perform whatever, they are doing for the timing under their charter. So for that, we hired an agency who does it for us, because as I mentioned, our systems were not configured to that extent to, carry out that kind of mismatch. So we hired an agency, the agency is working very, very well. But yes, sometimes a delta remains. That delta may not be that big as far as our volume goes. So I'll put, if I ask my team, when is the delta? So they say 2-3%. So 2-3%, if I count on the overall volume, perhaps it becomes a larger volume for us. But then at least to a very good extent, we are sure of the fact that 97-90% of the value matches with the filings done by the vendor, which is a good accomplishment as far as this area is concerned. But even 2%, if my credit is 2,000 crores a year, then even 2% could be 40 crores. So 40 crores in any case is a very big amount for us. So for that, one example which was just provided, the airlines agencies, our experience is at times they are not compliant, because multinationals, British Airways, for example, they don't have any office in India. They don't have any setup of that kind. I'm not saying they are not compliant, but the ones who are present in this country with a full-fledged tax team, I think they are much better placed as compared to the ones who don't have this kind of setup in this country. So from our side, there is no point which is worrisome that, we are losing any credit. It may only be a matter of time that we take the credit on day 1, day 3, day 5, or the next month. So that is the only challenge which we are facing. But otherwise, as far as loss is concerned, and of course, coming to a connected question, if we as an organization are having any loss, are we able to collect it from the vendor or not? It again depends upon two factors. One, are we in a position to negotiate that with the vendor, knowing the fact the vendor has done something which is not correct? But vendor may be placed at a place where probably we have no much access to any other vendor, and that vendor has got a monopoly. So what do you do? It's a COVID time, for example. So he says, I have to pay to my manpower, otherwise I stop the work. And I went to telecommunication, I cannot stop the work for a single second. So just to step into his shoe, maybe genuine or ingenuine. So at least we negotiate in a way that, okay, we are not stopping your payment to the extent of that mismatch. We are going ahead with this. You pay off to your employees, but continue with your services to us. But we hardly leave any stone unturned with as far as the collection of this money is concerned at a later point in time. Interest, of course, will never become a reality in this kind of thing. But yes, we have seen most of our vendors are genuine. Maybe an honest slippage would have happened in terms of their compliance, filing returns or punching the data into the return. By and large, they appreciate, but this reconciliation process takes a bit of time, maybe a month or two. That is the only thing. But yes, credit, my knowledge says, does not go waste.
No, very, very valid points, Rajesh. I think you have covered both macro and micro perspective. So with this, we come to the end of the session, and just Vinod, Shyam, and Rajesh, if one suggestion you have to give to make GST compliances simpler, ease of doing business, what will be that suggestion from a compliance standpoint?
Okay. I think we have come a long way from 2017 till today. But we have, instead of doing or going for a simplicity, we have complicated the GST. Right. I know that the ideal GST or a value-added tax will not be implemented in India because of the lot of consideration, political, federal structure of India and all. But at the same time, there are certain things like in yesterday's seminar, you were talking about the ISD, which can be removed. Similarly, TDS, TCS, really we required it when we have e-invoicing where every invoice is getting reported. Then along with that, there are multiple compliances which we can reduce. Like somebody was saying about the SCZs, we have large many SCZs. There also we require to put our data of export. Why can't it can be integrated with GST, where I'm putting my all exports over there to the GST authorities? So duplication in the system. And there are certain things which we are carrying for a longer period. If we can remove, I don't think there is any revenue stake involved in that. Once you have e-invoicing, which is real-time reporting to the GSTN portal, I feel that there is no need of e-way bill again. When you have a control at custom gate, you have control with the organized sector where the manufacturing is done, then probably I don't think we will require that kind of control where we are tracking the movement of goods all over the country. I think government can move ahead with this, assuming that there is a lot of scope for improvisation in the system, and they may bring that, and probably that will be the, I think, there we can say that our GST is successful.
Very valid points, Vinod. Shyam?
Yeah, Puneet. So as rightly mentioned by Vinod, so replication of the system compliance is causing trouble to the industry. So as I rightly mentioned on the right from the GSTR1, if the assistant code is already mentioned of the invoicing system, what is the need of to getting it manually punched again on the B2C transaction? You have the GSTR2A. Can we set up a scanner reader who can fetch the information from the right from the e-invoicing to develop your purchase register? That will save a lot of time to the industry. Can we dispense away with the e-invoice e-bill system on those cases where the invoicing system is happening?
Right.
There are certain movements like delivery challan and all where the invoice system is there, you need to track the movement. But especially the transaction where the invoicing system is in place, why there is a e-bill system? The original intent of bringing invoicing system was to do away with the e-bill system, but still we're continuing with that. So there are a lot of scope is there, Puneet. So the government has to think over it. The replication, the duplication of the system that is happening is putting additional pressure to the industry. Ultimately, we are doing this. We are meant for doing business, not to do the compliance.
Right.
So right, the TDS, TCS compliance. So in the context of agriculture industry, so you are supplying to the government agency, the municipal corporation and all, they need to deduct TDS, GST, TDS. And there are a lot of difficulty around that. So you need to get a TDS certificate from them, you have to reconcile, you have to claim back the credit, and the GSTN system and the TEN system are not working parallelly. So unless and until the GSTN and the TEN system has a synchronization, you will face a lot of difficulty around that.
Right. No, again, very valid points. Rajesh?
Puneet, I'll say one thing, and this is what I have been, I have been very vocal from the day one where we implemented GST in 2017. And I would switch from law to the practical side of it. Law in our country, we have beautiful people to draft the law. We have people like you, the lawyers and the professionals. So the legislations can be drafted, and of course, if there are certain shortcomings in the legislation at any point in time, it can be, done away with at a later point in time. But the real challenge, I have at least 50 such examples. Law was very clear, documentation was proper, but transaction was, not allowed by the tax authorities. So my earnest request to the government would be, if you want us to be educated every day with so much of the legislative changes in every processes, why you cannot educate your people with the legislation knowledge and behaviorally?
Right.
I'll give one small example, just 10 seconds. During COVID time, one of the province or one of the place in UP was, under total lockdown. The truck carrying our product took a diversion because that place was not open. He took a different side and he was caught. He had everything, document, invoice, tax mentioned on that, but what kind of, you're punishing the honest taxpayers. So that kind of sensitivity has to be brought into the mind of the tax administrators. And then I can see if your tax legislation falls short by 10%, if it is perfect by 90% legislation and behavior is 110%, this will be a grand success.
No, I think very well summed up, Rajesh. So with this, we come to the end of the today's session. So if I have to summarize, after 4 years of GST, and I think that's a summary of the whole event also, that GST is surely a good tax, but unfortunately, it's not that simple as it is supposed to be. So let's hope that the government works on this, hears industry's representations, and make it simple. So we come to the last section of our today's session. So this was Nitya GST article writing competition, which we organized, which was for leading law schools of the country. And we got very good response. So we'll be announcing the winners. So the first prize goes to Yash More. Yash, you can unmute yourself, and you can even switch on the video also. So Yash wrote article on denial of ITC to innocent buyer, constitutional delinquency. And Yash, I was impressed that in fact you covered the recent ruling of Breathill, which was the Madras High Court on this topic.
Yeah.
So Yash, you want to say anything on your experience or on the topic?
Yeah, thank you so much, Puneet. So I have been following this topic since quite a while. I thank Nitya because they gave me an opportunity to express my views on this article, and I greatly benefited from my discussion today. And I think I can build on my article even further with this, all the input from the leading practitioners and industry experts. As a student, I could only have limited experience into what is written in the judgment or in the law, but how practically problems are solved and how they are dealt with. I think this will help me build my research further and make it a really good research article which can be accessed and relied upon by future practitioners of the law. So thank you so much.
Yeah. So thank you, Yash, for participating, and congratulations for winning the first prize. Yeah.
Thank
you. Yeah. Second prize goes.
Congratulations, Yash.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much.
So the second prize goes to Ashutosh Chaudhary. Ashutosh, you can unmute yourself and put on the video. Ashutosh, you can.
Hello,
yeah.
sir.
Yeah. Hello, Ashutosh. So Ashutosh wrote article on test for determining composite and multiple supply under GST law, including jurisprudence under foreign laws. So, Ashutosh, I need to compliment you that you took the most complex topic which we have, and
Yes,
which is again likely to be most debated in times to come.
yes,
So
sir.
congratulations, Ashutosh, for winning the second prize.
Thank you.
Anything on your experience you want to share?
I would like to give thanks to the Nitya Tax team for giving me this opportunity and giving me this award also. So the topic was quite difficult, as you said already, and also in India currently, like when the goods and services are sold together, there is a problem in defining as a composite or mixed supply. So we can, like in my article, I mentioned that we can take the example of European and Canada legislation and jurisprudence, and it was a great experience altogether. Thank you.
Yeah, great, Ashutosh. Congratulations once again.
Thank you, sir.
And third prize goes to Aryan Singh Chauhan, who couldn't join the call. So he wrote an article on conundrums of taxation on territorial waters. So on all these topics of export of service, territorial nexus. So we'll wind up our session here, and we are grateful to you, Vinod, Shyam, Rajesh, for taking your time and sharing your thoughts. So as Bharatji also rightly mentioned, that I think participants, one, they joined in large number, and there were a lot of takeaways. So it was not just, I will say, a boring session from tax experts on provisions or rulings. I think it was a more insight as to how all of you are running indirect tax function of large companies. So we are thankful to you for sharing your thoughts. And with this, we come to end of today's session. Yeah.